Hello, I'm Lisa Shumate, and welcome to Career Frontier. This week, we're partnering with experts and business leaders across various industries to help discover new paths for success in your career and work life. Today, we're giving you an inside look at career mismanagement, prevention, and recovery. What are you doing that could be holding you back? We're also going to find out how being mindful at work will help you avoid stress. And finally, in this year of setbacks and disruption, how do you bounce back? Our guest is Mike Steib. Mike is CEO of Artsy, the largest global online marketplace for discovering, buying, and selling art by the world's leading artists. Prior to his current role, Mike was CEO of The Knot, where he developed America's #1 planning app and sold the parent company for nearly $1 billion in 2018. Mike also previously served in roles at Google, NBC Universal, and McKinsey & Company, among others. He's also the author of Career Manifesto, a guide for young professionals seeking more purpose and joy in their work. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Mike, welcome to the show.
Lisa, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Excellent. Well, I think a place to start when we talk about, getting off on the wrong foot in your career or along the way making a misstep is a fundamental thing that is so obvious when we listen to your audiobook, and that is the joy of work and finding a career that you can be joyful about.
Well, Lisa, I think it's the greatest gift life has to offer is the opportunity to work on something that you're passionate about, a mission that you're committed to, and with people and with a company or an organization that you're proud of and you enjoy working with. And it's something that I try to bring into my work every day, and it's something that I tried to convey in the book that you've been reading.
I think some people think that perhaps that's a little difficult to do. For instance, if they're not so, have a passion to do a particular field of work, it takes a little while to find your place in the workplace. Can you tell me some of the mistakes people make in trying to find their place in the workplace?
Lisa, first, I would note that there's no one size fits all. And the book that I wrote, the Career Manifesto, is targeted toward professionals in knowledge work who are early in their careers. And certainly there's a very different answer for someone who's a frontline worker, for someone who's working at an hourly rate. We're talking about different kinds of problems that are being addressed with the Career Manifesto. So if it's okay, I'll limit my answer to the target audience, if you would, for my book. And what I find is that there is this very hard and drastic shift that takes place between school and life. And in school, every day someone gives you an assignment. And if you comply and turn in the right answers on time, you get an A and you've won. And the second school ends, you're thrust into a world where there is no assignment. There is no clear goal other than the one that you set for yourself and the assignment that you agree to take on and the work that you decide you want to do. And career mismanagement, I think, starts with waiting for someone to tell you what the role is or the purpose or the tasks that are going to bring you joy and fulfillment and that you're going to contribute to, and the kind of impact that you want to have in society. In my book and in my work, I always start with the mission and the purpose. What impact is it that you want to have? And then lay out a plan for how to go about making the most impact in that thing that's important to you as possible.
Following up on your question about not sitting back and being passive and waiting for that tap on the shoulder, what are the sort of tactical ways you can be proactive about your career?
What I recommend people do is they're crafting their career plan. And a career does need a plan. The corporate ladder is a myth. You're only going to go as far as your plan and your hustle take you. The thing that I recommend people do is first establish what their personal mission and purpose is. There are all kinds of different jobs in this world, and they affect the world and they affect others in all different kinds of ways. And if you don't have a passion for insurance, you're never going to quite enjoy your job in insurance. Secondly, I suggest early in a career or even mid-career, visualizing the kind of role in the area of impact that you want to have, which For me, early in my career, I concluded I wanted to be the CEO in a consumer internet business. I wanted to be the CEO in a business that touches millions of people's lives and in a way that they can enjoy, makes their lives a little bit better. I wanted to run a company like that. And so what I did, and I suggest others do, is find people in the world who've done something like that. Look up their bios and write down what they are good at, what skills and capabilities and proven successes they've had in their careers, and look for themes, because that list that you'll write down is essentially now your to-do list over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. You have to develop those capabilities to earn your way into a role like that.
Very important point about thinking of it over the long haul, not the job, but the plan, the trajectory. And I'm wondering, when you decided you wanted to be a CEO, where, besides the tactics, what were you telling yourself in your head? Did you ever face fear? Like, well, what if I can't do this? Or experience failure that maybe made you think twice about getting there?
I think you'll feel that way all the time. I think it's Tony Robbins who says stress is just what type A people call fear of failing. If you have an ambitious plan or you're ambitious in your career, you're always going to feel like you're one misstep away from ruining it. And if you're really ambitious, you'll be taking on jobs that are a little bit beyond what you're currently capable of doing. You'll put yourself in the situation to learn until you figure it out and succeed in the role. I know I've done that a lot, but a byproduct of that is you'll often feel like someone's going to catch you. And it's frightening. It really is. What I can tell folks is this is only going to be so helpful until one has experienced it for themselves, but it's rarely are your career failures fatal. Generally speaking, if you're behaving ethically and you're trying your best, and when you make mistakes, you learn from the mistakes, you're just getting better at your job. I've missed my number some quarters. I've wished I had done a better job on one thing or another at various times in my career. I've given the presentation that fell flat. I've pitched the client who I needed to say yes, who said no. I've experienced all of it. And in the moment, it feels like this is everything. I couldn't sleep last night. And then you look back 6 months or a year later, and it usually ends up being a great learning experience that's made you better at something else around the corner that you didn't know was coming.
Join the club, fail early, fail often, and just keep going.
There's a moment in your career where you start to feel really comfortable. You think, I know how to do this. I'm doing something I know how to do. It's not that hard. In my experience, when someone feels that way, they're probably in a job that's too easy for them. They've probably reached a point at which their learning is plateauing and their growth is slowed. And I don't want to spend very much time in a place like that. Personally, it's not nearly as much fun. And you stop growing. You stop learning.
A number one way you can mismanage your career is to stop learning and to stop growing. And also the idea that hanging on to being an expert at something, like you said, you've got proficiency, you've got command of what you're doing. What is the thing you tell yourself to move to the next? Because you can just sort of get into that lull, right? If you're pretty proficient in it, just say, okay, that's it, I've arrived.
Well, I can tell you, Lisa, I've worked in healthcare. I've worked in startups, I've worked in media, and now at Artsy, I'm in the business of bringing art to people all around the world. Every one of these is a very different job than the others. And when you move from one role to the other, what you find is that learning the domain, it takes time and it takes work, but you can figure it out. But when you've experienced the different skills and the different challenges that different industries and different business dynamics, different customers and customer needs bring you across different industries, you start to develop this generalist toolkit that you might not get if you stay in the same line of business, the same domain for year after year after year.
I was also interested to hear in your book, you talk about the foundational elements that don't make it into a lot of career advice books, if you will, of sleep, working out, and nutrition. I mean, you're very exact about how much sleep, not going back to bed after the alarm goes off. You've got research behind it. Tell me what the importance and significance of those three things are.
Taking on hard jobs and ambitious projects and missions that you're really passionate about will test your endurance. It will make you feel stressed. It will expose you to having a shorter fuse. And when you start to burn out at work, you can't do good work anymore. You can't be a good teammate. You are no longer learning. You're in a fight or flight mode. You're not in a grow and succeed mode. I've learned the hard way over the course of my career is just how important the foundation of physical and mental health is to your success in your career. I'll give you an example. There was a study done, which I may not quote perfectly, but this is largely accurate. They had a group of people sleep 6 hours a night for a week. And then they had another group of people pull 2 consecutive all-nighters. And then they had them face off in mental and physical challenges. And they performed exactly the same. Now, Lisa, I'm sure you've had weeks where you only slept 6 hours a night. You didn't feel like you had just pulled 2 consecutive all-nighters. But in fact, you perform as if you've just pulled 2 consecutive all-nighters. And the strange thing in the study is that when they surveyed the 2 groups, the group that had slept 6 hours a night thought they did just fine. And the group that had pulled 2 all-nighters said, I'm dying. I'm dying here. Yeah. And it's easy to fall into a pattern of not sleeping enough and therefore not making good decisions, not having enough energy, not being productive in your work. And then the nighttime comes along and then you feel bad about yourself. So you watch Netflix for 4 hours and you go to sleep late again. And then the cycle continues. Since I've learned this, I've preached just how important it is to just sleep 8 hours, exercise in whatever way you exercise, whether it's going to the gym or walking or riding a bicycle or swimming. Find something, do it every single day. Get your heart rate up and get your head clear so that you can run your playbook effectively.
And that's really going to be my next question. You do talk about time management and how to really inventory how you're spending your time, and then some practical advice for getting some time back. Do you want to share a few of those tips?
I'm happy to. One is it's really important to delineate your work from your non-work time. I am not a proponent of working all day and all night and all weekend, but I'm a proponent of picking the times when you're going to work and working with focus and intensity. And then when you're not working, don't work. Not long ago in my career, we did a study on the use of Slack in one of our organizations. And we found that something like 60 or 70% of the team was looking at Slack. They opened the app, but only 10% were writing something in Slack. What it suggested to me was that team was sort of always on and on the alert for work, but they weren't really focused and working. And now there's rarely a Saturday when I don't work, but it's for a set number of hours when I am separated from my family, focused, I do the work, and then I put it down and I'm done for the day. And it's been proven in studies how poor people are at multitasking and how easily distracted we are and all that is focused work time and then focused non-work time when you recharge or sharpen the saw, regenerate before it's time to work again. The second is just in using your calendar very proactively. If you wanted to read 20 books a year, a book has about 350 pages, let's call it. So that's 20 pages a night if you do the math. And it takes most people about 30, some people 40 minutes to read 20 pages a night. If you don't carve out the time to read 20 pages a night for 30 or 40 minutes, you will not read those 20 books. It is mathematically impossible for you to read the books if you don't invest the time. If that were really important to someone, I'd suggest you lock in, when you're going to go to bed, when you're going to wake up, you lock in the 20 minutes or the 30 minutes or 40 minutes before and you read. And you actually put it in your calendar. Because you think about all the things that we say we want to do. We want to work out. It's not in your calendar, but a one-on-one with your manager or attending a staff meeting or going to a dentist appointment is in your calendar and you do it. And if you start to treat the optional things that are important to you as committed things that are in your calendar, and you honor it, then your calendar becomes this operating system that you can tune up every Sunday night when you look at the week ahead and make trade-offs proactively, decide what you will do and will not do. And then, look, you can still have fun. If you would schedule time to read books on Thursday night, but someone calls you with Taylor Swift tickets, I would cancel the reading and go to Taylor Swift. But you get to make that choice proactively rather than just look back on every week and say, why didn't I get more done? Why didn't I do these things I commit to?
Tell me a little bit about your role now as CEO of Artsy and, how you're applying these principles that have served you over the years.
So we have this wonderful company. We have a product where we've brought together thousands of art galleries and auction houses from over 100 countries around the world, over 100,000 artists, and 1 million works of art that you can buy the click of a button through the Artsy app. And we're really motivated to do it. And this starts where you and I started this conversation. Having a career that has a purpose, doing work that's connected to a mission is, to me personally, it's something I cannot do without it. And in Artsy, I feel so lucky to be in this role because we have a mission to fundamentally transform the art world for the better, to make it more welcoming, to make it more open and transparent, to make it more diverse and inclusive by taking what has historically been an art world that's closed off to folks outside of that elite inner circle. And we're really opening it up so that anyone who loves art or wants to engage in art, buy art, be a part of the art world can do it. My work at Artsy, it starts with that. We recruit people for whom this mission is really important. Because let's be honest, there's plenty of jobs out there. Any of us could go work at a big tech company and make a lot of money and not work a lot of hours and not have a lot of pressure. And my company is smaller. We have less free food. We are trying to transform an industry that's hard to transform. So you're only going to do it if it's something that to you personally is important. And then, as a business leader, it's easy to make decisions at work when the decisions are about making a positive change in an industry. You always decide to do the thing that brings positive change to the industry. It really starts there. Then with all the productivity stuff, I usually wait till somebody tells me, I'm being really unproductive. And I say, I've got an idea for you. My favorite one, Lisa, someone will always say, I'll suggest a way to spend time on the side developing new skills to help someone reach a different point in their career. Someone says, look, I work in sales, but I think I have a passion for marketing. And then they'll say, look, I want to do all this stuff, but there's no time. There's no time. And I say, I totally understand. Just do one quick favor for me. Open up the settings on your iPhone and it'll show you how many hours you spent this week on Instagram and on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. And when you add it all up, the average person spends about 2.5 hours in social media, entertainment, and gaming apps a day. And then I say, would you like to trade 3 of those days for 7.5 hours invested in the thing you want to do in your career? Everyone wants to make that trade. And now they have this opportunity to do it proactively. And how do we ensure we do it proactively? We go block it out on the calendar. And if I've got 2 hours of networking in the marketing industry blocked in my calendar Tuesday from 7 to 9, then Tuesday from 7 to 9, I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not playing Candy Crush. And I've proactively decided how to invest those hours rather than have those hours consumed from me by some app that wanted to, whose business model is wasting my time.
Mike, thank you. Bottom line, careers are a proactive, not reactive sport. And you've given us some great tips. So thank you so much for joining us today on Career Frontier.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Mike Steib, CEO of Artsy, sharing his expertise on career management. Welcome back to Career Frontier, exploring success in the workplace. I'm Lisa Shumate, and joining us now is Cyndi Stewart. Cyndi is the founder and CEO of Coaching for Genuine Solutions, where she works with leaders and teams in corporate and nonprofit organizations to develop skills vital to their personal and professional growth and success. Cyndi has earned certifications in HR, coaching, as well as training and development, and she brings more than 20 years of experience with Fortune 500 companies. Welcome to the show, Cyndi.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Well, one of the things we want to talk about is mindfulness. And the reason we want to do that is because we've been so busy, so overloaded, so overscheduled. It seems like there's less and less time for that thing that can make such a difference in your life.
Exactly. And that's just the point, actually, making the time. Because we have to make time for ourselves. We have to make time for our thoughts. We have to see where those thoughts are leading us. And because of everything that's been going on around us, we have to understand where other people are. And all of that comes from mindfulness. It comes from stopping, pausing, taking a break, so to speak, so that you can reflect on where you are. What are your thoughts telling you? What's different for you now than 5 years ago? Pre-pandemic thoughts and priorities are very different for a lot of people than what's going on with them now. How are you handling yourself? How are you handling your health, your finances, your career? There are so many things going on that require us to stop, take pause, and re-examine where we are.
Now just, your 5 best tips for mindfulness as far as how often, where, when, is there a period of time that it requires to sort of empty out?
There used to be an adage about continuous learning, like we're always learning. Well, we need to always be mindful. There's not a time not to be mindful because there are always things going on around you. You always have thoughts. There are things that grab you. There are events that grab you. There are conversations that grab you that demand that you stop and give those things some credibility, some thought. And that comes from mindfulness. Now, people can do that in different ways. Some people like to do it in the morning. Some people like to do it in the evenings. Some people like to journal about their thoughts. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. But what journaling really does, it allows you again to pause, to reflect on your own thoughts. Because there are some things that creep in for us that we have to stop and say, how do I feel about that? And we only know that when we stop and get curious about where we are and get curious about what's going on around us. What are other people dealing with? How are we able to be empathetic with other people if we're not mindful? And in this case, by mindful, I mean having an awareness, an intentional awareness about where you are and what's going on in the environment around you.
So let's say we're doing that. Let's say we're stopping, whether it's the morning or the end of the day, we've pulled out the journal. Is it just a matter of writing down what has stuck with you? Like, what am I feeling right now? What conversations? What are some prompts for doing journaling and becoming more mindful?
The things that you're thinking about, the things that are pulling at you, things that are happening in your family, things that are happening in your health, things that are happening at work. Even now, with people transitioning back to work, a lot of people are thinking about, what does that look like for me? People are thinking about their retirement differently. They're thinking about, do I want to stay here, being wherever I live currently? Do I want to live closer to family? Is this the career that I really want to be in? What has the last 18 months taught me about myself? What has the last 18 months taught me about my family, my colleagues? All sorts of things pop up in our head that we don't give credence to because we don't take the time. So when I say being mindful about something, it's writing it down. Writing it down is it note-taking for you? Is it bullet points for you? Some people doodle and draw. It does not have to be some fixed thing that someone else is doing. What is it that helps you get your thoughts out? That's really all it's about. It's about being aware of where you are, your environment, and what's going on around you. That comes with being curious, being open, even being empathetic.
What I hear you saying is mindfulness, it is about the pause and the reflection so as to propel forward.
Yes.
To make a potential change. What tangible benefits do you think come from mindfulness other than that moment to the actual mindfulness itself?
Because it helps you to do just that. It helps you to know what's next for me. Maybe there are things going on in my industry. Maybe there are things going on in my family. I haven't thought about those things. And so often we keep these things in our head. That causes us to be overwhelmed. And when we allow ourselves to sit, to think about where we are, why are we there? Why is this even a question for me? Why am I now questioning my career? What has led to that? Those things matter, and they help you get to the next step, whatever the next step is for you. And that's different things for different people. There are people that they may not be contemplating their career. They may be contemplating going back to school. They may be contemplating moving their parents from one place to another. But they're the things that have prompted you to think about, where am I? What fits well for me now, as opposed to rethinking the old story and telling ourselves the old story that we've been telling ourselves for so long. Is that really the story that fits anymore? Does that story really fit me? Is that my narrative? Is that the narrative that somebody else placed on me? So you get to examine, talk to yourself, think your thoughts out, and reflecting helps with that, and writing helps with the reflecting.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that mindfulness almost always leads to taking more action in your life because you've done that, you've sort of taken account and an answer or a direction pops out from that?
So that's interesting, because what typically pops out from that is really more questions. Because one question leads to another question. But we all know you don't get answers until you start asking questions. We don't do that enough within our environment. A lot of times we'll say, oh, she'll do X, Y, and Z thing. Well, it's not because we know that. It's because we've assumed that. That fits our narrative. But if we stop and ask ourselves, why do I think that? Where did that thought come from? How do I know that this person will do that? I don't. So it comes from being aware, being intentional, and putting some effort. And it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to go inside of yourself. It takes a lot of courage to ask other people questions about where they are and how they feel. And that's really, I think, what has been missing. And I think that is the big intersection where we find ourselves now. Thinking about where we are, how do we feel, but being very mindful and alert and intentional about how does the other person feel, and being able to be empathetic with where they are.
One of the things when you talk about stopping and reflecting, I think we all realized when we had no choice but to be at home, is how reactive we have all become. We're just in this constant state of busyness. You've talked about the benefits of journaling, and I guess you also have some real observations about what all this busyness is doing to us.
Yeah, it's making us move without thinking. It's rote reaction. That has, again, gotten us to where we are now, where we are not able to handle so much of what's going on because we've never thought about it. We did what we did yesterday. You wake up on Monday, you do whatever you do on Monday, you follow that up with whatever you do on Tuesday. And you're not thinking about, how is this affecting me? How is this affecting my goals, my dreams, my priorities? What has changed about me? What has changed about my environment? What has changed about my life, my family? When I'm going through a divorce, when I'm going through health issues, it shouldn't take a crisis to make you think. It shouldn't take a pandemic for you to start thinking about your environment and involving the people around you to share in that. We learn so much about ourselves based on what other people think and say. But if we're not talking to those people and we're just assuming everything is okay, everything is not okay. And we have to be okay with ourselves to say, I can feel it. Things are not okay with me right now. But it takes, again, the slowing down, the being mindful, being intentional about where am I and how am I being affected by everything that's going on. Because I think that's what's causing a lot of the stress. That's what's causing a lot of the PTSD that you're hearing. It's no longer associated with just being in the military. People are having issues around mental health and stress and depression and anxiety. And a lot of that is really because they're not slowing down. They're too busy to take care of themselves. And we should never get too busy to take care of ourselves and to take care of those around us.
It's also interesting how we come up with these stories about busyness keeps you in control, when in fact it's the very way to lose control. And what I hear you saying is stopping, mindfulness, the questioning, puts you back in control.
It does. It does. It gives you an insight without taking the time to gain that perspective. And that, again, it takes courage to do that, because sometimes we have to realize we've been playing from an old playbook and those plays are no longer relevant. Whether it's in our career, if you're a manager, you're a leader, and you're used to your team being in the office, well, things are changing. What does that mean? How does that affect your team? Does it mean that they're not effective? Well, how have things worked so far? Or is it just your old playbook telling you, resorting back to the stories, to old narratives that you've held for so long? They don't have to be true. They're just your truth. Those are old stories. Those are old narratives. And we get afraid of what we don't know. We resist what we don't know. But we have to be open to the possibilities of what else is effective, because we're in a new game and we have to be ready to play in the new game. But it's your mental skills, your emotional skills. How are you able to relate to yourself? How are you able to relate to those around you? You know, we're learning so much about ourselves. We're learning so much about our work environment. We're learning so much about the social environment that we're in. How do we keep that conversation going and not make it a moment in time, but make it something that we recognize as a value add to who we are as a community, who we are in our industry, who we are as individuals, who we are as leaders, who we are as parents? If we're not mindful about these things, it will be everything repeating itself. And we'll wonder why we didn't learn. Well, we didn't learn because we didn't stop and take in the lessons.
You've coached people at all stages in corporations and nonprofits. And when it comes to promotion and really success in the long run, however you want to define it, whether it's title or whether it's having the life you've designed, it seems that it's never really about skill, that the skill part is maybe what gets you in the door. How does mindfulness play into the other than what you really need to succeed?
It's the relationship. That's what gets you to the satisfaction in your career, outside of your career, in your family. It's the relationship. How are you connecting to the people around you? How are they connecting to you? How are you connecting with the work that you're doing?
And to yourself is what I hear you say.
Exactly. You have to feel fulfilled in what you're doing. How do you do that? What's your checkpoint? How do you check that? Again, what worked 5 years ago, is it really still working for you today? If it is, great. If it's not, what's not working? It doesn't mean you have to change your career, but it does mean there is something different going on, and I need to know what that is. And I need to know how that affects me, why it is affecting me. What do I need to do to make the adjustments that I need to make in order to be the success that I see myself as being?
As we wrap up, tell me personally how mindfulness and journaling help you.
I started a newsletter during the pandemic. And it was something that was always on my radar, and I was going to do it regardless. It just so happened that it fell during the pandemic. But with everything that was going on, with the death of George Floyd, with the pandemic, how it was affecting people, how it was affecting my clients, how it was affecting my work.
And you.
And that meant it was affecting me. I found that I needed to take a break from my newsletter, because I needed to step back. I was finding myself in new territory. And a lot of the writing that I did after that was personal writing for myself. So I could get an understanding of, where am I in all of this? And not only where am I, how can I help other people who may be dealing with a lot of the same issues that I'm dealing with? And it doesn't even have to be bad, because one of the things that we have to recognize is being uncomfortable and things being disruptive does not mean they're not necessary and beneficial. And we run away from not being comfortable when sometimes being uncomfortable is the very thing that leads us to the next thing, the next right thing.
That is a perfect place to end, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Cyndi.
Thank you.
Cyndi Stewart is founder and CEO of Coaching for Genuine Solutions. Next, we'll pick up the conversation with Bill Imada, founder of Millennial and Gen Z Community, and we'll talk to him about building an important muscle necessary for leadership, resilience. I'm Lisa Shumate, and you're listening to Career Frontier. My next guest is Bill Imada. Bill is the founder of Millennial and Gen Z Community, a national organization supporting young leaders. He is also the co-founder of IW Group, a firm that specializes in multicultural marketing and communications. Great to have you on the show, Bill.
Wonderful to be here, Lisa. Thank you.
Bill, you have put so much of your personal time and energy and resources in supporting our youngest workers as they make it from college to career. That's a very important transition. And I wondered, how did you uncover the need for this?
Well, Lisa, when I was watching what was happening around the world and specifically here in the US, I noticed that there were a number of people that weren't speaking to one another. And this divide that we have in our country, the politics, the worries, the concerns about the direction of our country really challenged young people today and said, how do I weigh into these conversations when so many people are divided in our country? And so I felt it was important for us to not only bring people together to have conversations, but also to bring young people together to dispel some of the negative myths that were floating around about their generations. And so that's why the National Millennial and Gen Z community was started.
You know, Bill, I think we've always brought our whole selves to work. And, generations before, I think, probably didn't share as much about themselves at work. And I think today what we're seeing is difficulty with boundaries as far as what comes to work from the manager's perspective and what needs to come to work perhaps from the employee's perspective. Can you talk to me a little bit about the whole person at work?
Sure. The concern right now for a number of people, especially younger people, is to be able to bring your genuine whole self, your best self to work. And so this idea around transparency and being genuine is really grown significantly among younger people. And I think older folks had a little difficulty with that because we've always been told to separate work from personal lives, to not talk about your personal problems with, your colleagues and your friends. But this younger generation really feels strongly that if you're going to be great workers, great colleagues, great problem solvers, you have to bring everything that's about you to that job. And so what's nice about it is that people now feel free to be able to talk about some of the things that have been taboo in the past, whether or not they identify with a different gender, whether or not they have a concern about being of mixed heritage or a person with a disability. Especially younger people now really want to embrace those uniquenesses about each person, because that actually adds to the diversity of talent and is valued now in the workplace. So younger people today, they want you to just be yourself, be able to say whatever you want, be able to discuss conversations in an open and honest manner.
How do you find, or do you find, that ever backfires? Perhaps a person of any age not having the judgment about how it could be received on the other end. We've been doing a lot of Zooms, obviously Teams, and there's the chat function. And people, when the chat is open, weigh in like they do on social media with every thought, perhaps maybe too frequently. How do you set up some guardrails that will serve our young workers so that they're not perceived as professionally immature?
Sure, Lisa. I'm very concerned about the chat box, and I think there's a lot of worries whenever we're on video conferences and social media that those chats can be malicious at times. And so what I'm encouraging is, if you have a criticism or something to say that's negative, word it in a way that isn't offensive, word it in a way that inspires or encourages greater discussion. And if you do have a criticism, always follow it up with a great suggestion. Now, there is a little bit of a danger about transparency and being genuine and open, because what we are seeing today in the workplace and online is that people are so open about their jobs and their work and their salaries that they often discuss, well, how much are you making and what was your raise like? Or did you get a promotion? And this level of transparency sometimes is a tad too open. There's some things that people should probably keep private. And usually when you're sharing that private information with other people within a company, it's often taken out of context. And so there are some dangers and risks involved in this openness, but a good manager will always find a way to bring it back to the enterprise and to that individual that he or she is talking to.
It seems you're also talking about trust here, that we want to trust workers to have the good judgment, and the workers want to trust management to be as transparent as possible.
Absolutely. And I do think that it's very important for the senior leadership of organizations to really lean in on these conversations and be as open and honest as possible. And for young adults today, they want to be a part of the solution. They don't want the boss and the senior leadership of a company or organization to hide things from them. Pull them in early. Let them know what the challenges the company is facing today and how they might be able to be part of the solution. And that level of transparency is actually going to help them grow and help them become problem solvers later.
Yeah. Don't think they can't handle it, because they can.
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
But they're watching all these things on social media. They're learning a lot about life faster than boomers and even older Gen Xers. They're learning the details of life so early, and it's not a good idea to hide things from them.
You and I have had many conversations about stereotyping, and it occurs everywhere. And I wonder what sort of prejudgments or misconceptions you feel workers have about, especially this is your first job or you're still early in your career, about the workplace. What are their misconceptions about the workplace, and some manager misconceptions about the generation that is entering the workforce that are, under 40.
We're in a situation now where there's 5 generations often working in a workplace, and that's a little unusual. That poses all sorts of unique opportunities and challenges. The challenges, I think, for younger people is that they don't see a pathway to success. And part of it is because people like me, a baby boomer, we love our jobs, we love working, we want to have purpose, and retiring at 60 or 65 just doesn't seem realistic to many of us because we still believe we have gas in the tank. Younger people, when they see this, they go, well, if the boomers aren't retiring, then it creates this pipeline blockage because the Gen Xers can't move up and the millennials can't move up, and the Gen Z folks, they said, well, where am I going to go? And I really don't want to spend 10, 20, or 30 years moving up the ladder of an organization if I cannot see where I'm heading. But also this idea of this structure that many corporations and organizations have is daunting for young people today because they see how hard you work, Lisa. They're like saying, I really don't want to work as hard as Lisa does or as hard as Bill does. But young people today say they're working so hard, they're not really enjoying things. And I don't want to be a part of that. I want to have this harmony in my life between work, job, my friends, and the things I enjoy. And I want companies to provide an environment that not only keeps me engaged, but also provides me with some unique experiences that I may not be able to find. These massive corporations with multiple layers are daunting for young people because they do not see themselves in those roles. The additional thing that I think a lot of employers worry about is the stereotype that, wow, Gen Zers and millennials, they're job hoppers, they last on a job for 6 months and they're already looking for where the grass may be greener. And baby boomers who really stick their nose to the grindstone and realize that there's a little bit of a pecking order. You need to stick with your job. You need to work hard. You need to demonstrate your value. And then you have an opportunity to move up. But young people today, they don't feel that same urge. They want to be loyal to companies, but they want those companies to be loyal to them. They want those companies to be purposeful. They want those companies not to just talk about their good deeds and what they're doing for their employees and their teams, but they want to see it and feel it and taste it.
Exactly. A different relationship for sure that has to include work from both sides of the equation. And so, Bill, it has been a very challenging time for all workers. And yet, I think what we all know, too, is struggle and overcoming adversity and bouncing back from mistakes is all part of what helps one grow. So when you have conversations with employees, whether at your company or with Gen Z, what are your best advice around building resilience?
I encourage them to work very closely with their mentors. And a lot of times I think we tell young people, find a mentor. But what we don't tell our young people is, how do you find a mentor? How do you negotiate that relationship? How do you make it win-win so that the person that is mentoring you benefits from that relationship? I encourage people to have those conversations early with their mentors and talk about the things that they would like to receive from that relationship. And young people, they may want to also ask their mentors, what would you like from this relationship? Because it should be mutually beneficial.
You know, Bill, you mentioned mentor, and I wonder if can your boss, who has to manage you, really serve as your mentor?
That's a really good question, Lisa. And I have to say that a mentor is could be anybody. And a lot of people don't realize that a mentor could be your next door neighbor. It could be the receptionist. It could be a former boss. A mentor is someone that's going to give you honest advice, a person that doesn't have a personal stakes all the time in what you're doing and is going to give you honest feedback, honest ideas, honest opinions about where you are today and where you want to go. I want to encourage people to have more than one mentor. I want to encourage people to find people that are going to challenge them, find people that aren't going to say yes to everything they ask for. And could it be your boss? Absolutely, it could be your boss. But I do think that when you do sit down with your boss, you should ask some questions. How do you view this relationship? How will this benefit you? How will this benefit the company? And what can I expect from a mentee-mentor relationship? And I don't think we do that. We just say, hey, I want to mentor. Will you mentor me? You know, most people are going to say yes. But what doesn't happen is the discussion after that is, how does this relationship begin? What do I need to do? How many hours do you have for me? And I think any good mentee-mentor relationship requires some type of agreement on the amount of time that the mentee and mentor will be able to spend talking and engaging one another.
Bill, just to kind of wrap up on a personal note, what has made a difference in your life and career? You founded a company, you're working with the world's largest companies, and then you are also pouring your heart and soul in developing the next generation of leaders. What have been the things that have inspired you?
Well, I think a number of people have been concerned about this diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation. And a number of people have told me it doesn't include me. I feel left out of those conversations. And I want people in your audience to recognize that diversity works. And what inspires me are a number of Americans that have really made an impact on our country. And I use their quotes every single day. And it started off with an Italian-American woman named Catherine Barchetti, who wanted to start a retail empire in Pittsburgh. And she was blocked almost every step of the way. And she finally found her voice. And it was because she had a mantra. And her mantra was, make a customer, not a sale. And I have never forgotten that this Italian-American woman that wanted to start a retail empire and ultimately became successful had that mantra. And I used it each and every day. Make a customer, not a sale. There's a number of Black Americans like Maya Angelou, the poet who passed away. She always said, nothing works unless you do. I remember that quote each and every day. Even Latinos saying things like, donde comen cinco, comen seis. If you could feed 5 people at your dinner table, there's always room for a 6th. And I really believe that's true with ideas, that every idea is worth listening to. So if somebody comes up with an idea and they're not at your table, that's okay. You could have a 7th idea, you could have an 8th idea, you could have a 9th idea. And that's really important. And lastly, Ben Nighthorse Campbell, who was an American Indian congressman, one of the very first Native Americans to ever hold a congressional seat, said there is but one factor for success: never, ever give up. And that's why diversity conversations like this are so important.
Bill, yours is an important voice in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for spending time with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for your time as well.
That was Bill Imada. He is the founder of Millennial and Gen Z Community, co-founder of IW Group. Thank you for helping us learn how to be more resilient and for all your inspiring comments. Hi, Lisa here. Thanks for joining us for Career Frontier. For more clips, content, and full-length episodes, visit careerfrontier.org.